morning we found out that Alan Rickman, the British actor and director, was taken from us. He was 69 years old, and as with it seems like so many celebrities recently, died from cancer. The president was talking about it in his State of the Union, and we're just reminded every day the toll it takes on just countless people in our country and around the world. This is going to be a different sort of final judgment. It's not going to be one of our fast, slickly produced final judgments. It's just I've been thinking about him today after finding out about this, being blindsided about it, and I wanted to talk about some of his roles that stood out to me and why I think he stood out as an actor to so many people. And if you want, there's retrospectives and statements from many of the actors and actresses who worked with him over the course of his career. I've read some of them from his Harry Potter co-stars, and they're very moving, and they paint a picture of a guy who is not only a consummate professional, but an amazingly helpful and caring and genuinely nice person that we need more of in this world. And so I just want to talk about a couple of the roles. But first, one of the things that first made me interested in Alan Rickman was, I mean, he had been involved in theater and in television, but his first movie role was when he was 42 years old in Die Hard. I just think that's so amazing. Obviously, he'd been working in the industry, but the idea that you could discover this huge part of who you are going to be and who you're going to be remembered as being in your 40s. And I think that that should be an inspiration, not just to actors and actresses and other people in the entertainment industry, but to all of us. That regardless of what we've been doing throughout our life, we can always change and discover new elements of both ourselves and what we're capable of giving to the world. So on to some of the characters. So obviously Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He complained a little bit later on in his life that he was seen as being typecast as a villain. And people just thought, oh, that's what he does, is he does villains. And he pointed out, there were huge periods where I didn't play a villain for a decade or more. And it's just because of a couple of his big roles that were very well received. People thought of him as a villain. But over the course of his career, he played romantic leads and comedy leads and supporting actors, both sort of like more slapstick and more subtle, as we'll get into in a little bit later. But the Sheriff of Nottingham was a great role because he was at the same time menacing, but also vulnerable in a semi-comedic way. He was able to deliver the comedic line while representing a serious threat to the protagonist. And I watched that movie very early on in my life. I've always, as you might know from watching his videos, not technically fantasy, but into that sort of thing. And so he stood out early on as sort of an archetypical villain in that sort of mold. Next, Marvin the Paranoid Robot in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you've read the books or if you've seen the movies, incredibly quirky and odd and sort of perfectly British in a number of different ways. In the way that it's constructed, the way that it's written, the comedy. And he was the perfect person for this role. Now, this isn't the only sort of British comedy, but so dry and so understated. It's just, it's the perfect distillation of British comedy to me. And one of the highlights of that movie. Now, this is a movie that a lot of people, I think, have learned to love in Galaxy Quest. He played the actor who plays Dr. Lazarus. It's one of my favorite sci-fi movies, despite the fact that it was intended to poke fun at both sci-fi movies and people like me who take them so seriously. But, and this is true of so many roles throughout his career, even though he's playing a guy who is sad about the fact that he isn't accorded the respect that he thinks he deserves, he brings this authenticity and authority to the role, at the same time being funny, and in a movie that is largely a satire. It's slapstick, and it's stereotypical, and it's corny on purpose. There are a couple of scenes, like when he's holding that dying alien, that you're like, oh yeah, no, this guy can't help but bring weight to the roles that he's in. Even if it's a silly alien dying in his arms, just in the way he moves, the way he speaks, no, this is a fucking actor. And I watch this movie probably once a year, and I'm reminded of that. And obviously a lot of great quotable lines coming from that, but I'm not going to do the stereotypical thing and quote them right now. And then for a lot of younger people, the role that he is known for and will be remembered for, despite the fact that he's been in so many movies over the past few decades, and that would be Severus Snape in the Harry Potter movies. Now, I think perhaps more than any other character in that epic of so many characters over the course of the 7, 8 movies, he changed and evolved over the course of it. In the first movie, he is menacing, and the way with just a look or the way he draws out his words so slower and slower as he moves through a line is menacing, and it's iconic. But by the end, I don't think this is a spoiler at this point, but when he dies, no, it's a sad moment. This is perhaps the most complicated character in that entire series. And even though he is forced to say ridiculous things and do ridiculous things over the course of it, like you're watching that and it's a kid's movie, but you're moved by the experience that Severus Snape had over the course of his life. And there are so many actors, even good actors, that would not have produced that, but he did. And so, look, these are just a few of his roles. He was in a great number of non-fantasy, non-sci-fi, dramatic roles and comedy roles, many of which I've unfortunately not seen yet. But he's the sort of actor that you don't realize until you stop to think about it, how many movies he has made for you and made the experience better for his inclusion in them. Both on the screen and if you listen to the memorials being posted today by so many people that have worked with him, that he's helped them in their career, helped them to become better performers. And he's just one of those people that's working behind the scenes and in front of the camera and making these movies and movies better than they would otherwise be. And so it's a very sad day that he has been taken from us so young, only 69 years old. Nobody saw it coming, obviously. And man, he's not going to be in any more movies. And that's an obvious thing, and it's a thing that we have to deal with constantly in this world. But every time it happens, it's sad, and I don't know, it makes you think that sometimes the world's a sucky place to be in. Alan Rickman died at 69, obviously going to be missed by his coworkers and millions of fans around the world. And that's my final judgment.